Hey, y'all, let me do this real quick. There's a verse in Psalms 8:5 and a verse in Hebrews 2:7. And the verse is whether or not God created us or Jesus a little lower than the angels. And this discussion came up last night in a chat. And I remembered the verse being God created us a little lower than the angels. And when I went to look it up, I was seeing it made him a little lower than the angels. So is this a Mandela effect? Is this a change? And it's interesting when you go to look this up with all the parallel translations. The the NIV in both Hebrews and in Psalms says you have placed them a little lower than the angels. You crowned them with glory. And then there's us as well. It's in the New International Version. It's the New Living Translation. Every other version is him, referring to Jesus. But in the and I know people say, well, those aren't real translations, but it's very, very interesting to see these translations saying, and the contemporary English version says, you made us lower than the angels for a while, and yet you have crowned us with glory and honor. Since if you go look at the Greek and the Hebrew words for him, it's very clear that it's him and Jesus. Oh, the Good News Translation also says you made them for a little while lower than the angels. So the Greek and the Hebrew, they're saying should be him and Jesus. New Revised Standard Version says you have made them for a little while lower than the angels. There's only a few, but you have to question where if the Greek and the Hebrew word for this is him and referring to Jesus, where are they getting the us from? And I mean, my memory is that it was us, but maybe I was just reading one of those translations. Maybe I was just reading the NIV, and that's why I thought it was us. But is that a Mandela effect? I can tell you that that's a pretty, I mean, that's a significant error on the part of these other translations. Because the difference between whether or not he made us or Jesus lower is theologically pretty significant, I think. Now, if you go into the NIV and you read it, there's this little subscript, like it's no big deal. It says, like, in putting everything under them, and then there's this little D letter, and then you go down to the bottom, it says, or him. Like, it's no big deal. It's in putting everything under them, God left nothing that is not subject to them. Yet at present we do not see everything subject to them. Huge difference, which I find interesting. So I'm not sure if that is a Mandela effect at this point or if just a translational issue, but it's a significant translational issue to me. That's not a minor one, and it's, I don't know, that's one more for the KJVers to argue, not to do these side translations, because that one's pretty major. But my memory is that it was us, but that could be driven by one of these other translations. The problem is it was the late 80s, early 90s that I was in college to study theology and really diving in the Bible this deep, and my memories come from them. So it's difficult for me to say that this is a Mandela effect change, but it's definitely an issue, I think, amongst the translations, a serious issue. I would say when I hear new Christians talking about their theology and their beliefs and systems like that, they often, it's good. I've learned that there's an inner knowing, and you need to run what you're hearing through your inner knowing. Is this right or is this wrong? You've got to go in and listen to that voice that's on the inside. That does make me sound a little bit mystical, but I think the Mandela effect in general is somewhat mystical. And the beauty of the Mandela effect is that we understand that we are more than this matrix reality. We know that this is constructed. We're in these bodies, these physical avatars, but for us to have a memory of things that used to be different, but this present reality doesn't hold these things, indicates that we are somewhat outside of the fishbowl. We are larger than this place that we can stand with our memories and say, yes, I know this is different now, and for some reason I can remember it very clearly. That to me is a testament of being larger than this place, than this construct. Side note, I'd like to thank everybody for their comments in my last video. Please bear in mind that I do these in one session. So in the last one, I got Priscilla confused with her daughter, and I said something else wrong too. But there's no editing here. I record it, and I move on with my day. So it's very quick. Otherwise, I'd never record anything. I appreciate Noble making a comment. When Noble Mystique makes a comment, he's like the E.F. Hutton of Mandela Effects. We all stop and listen because I always loved on Mandela Monday, any of us could say something, especially Dan, and you kind of only take it half serious. He's always trolling. But when Noble said something, it had an air of, scholarly research and, just very, very authoritative. If Noble said it, if we were on the fence, is this a Mandela effect? If Noble coughed up some evidence for it being Mandela effect, well, that settled it. We're stamping that as a bona fide Mandela effect. That's one thing I like about Noble making comments. Other than that, I would say if you're reading the Bible and you're wondering what God is saying here, you're reading for the main idea, or you're just seeking direction in your life, run that through the filter of that inner knowing. Ask for God's voice to be clear. How will you know if it's God's voice? God's not going to tell you to hurt other people. I can tell you that. That's an easy one. God's gonna pretty much guide you towards being loving towards others. And whatever circumstances you find yourself in, it's going to go more towards that. God isn't always telling you to sacrifice yourself in terms of, sometimes people feel like they place the equivalence of spirituality and poverty, or sacrifice yourself like in major ways. That's not always what God's telling you to do. Even though I can cough up plenty of verses that make it sound like God wants you to cut off your arm or throw your life into the toilet to prove how trusting you are of him. That one there I'd be a little cautious about. So just in general, I thought I'd throw that out there. Hope you're having a great day and listening to that inner voice as well. And God bless.